The warehouse door creaked open. A single bulb swung overhead. Shadows stretched across cold concrete. Bruce Lee stepped inside. Not hurried, not loud, just calm. The air shifted. A subtle pull like gravity had tilted. Across the space, the challenger froze, eyes narrowed, breath slowed. No one spoke. No one moved. Only the faint scrape of shoes on the floor. Bruce paused, one slow step forward. The light caught his face. Stillness, power in silence. The challenger shifted. Ever so slightly, the first crack in his certainty. Witnesses held their breath. Time stretched. A drop of sweat fell from the ceiling, unnoticed, and in that silence, the first choice was made. Bruce did not flinch. He did not retreat. He did not speak. The fight had already begun. The warehouse door shuddered as it opened. Footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, across the concrete floor. Each step carried weight. Shadows shifted in the weak light. A man paused at the threshold, surveying the emptiness. His hands were still, his eyes sharp. Nothing moved except the faint swing of a single overhead bulb. Another figure entered, smaller, quiet. He carried a calm that seemed to slow the air around him. The warehouse itself felt heavier in his presence. Every observer instinctively stepped back, even before he spoke. Bruce Lee appeared last. His entrance was neither hurried nor announced. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The room, dark and rusted, seemed to lean forward, holding its breath. He walked without urgency. Each step measured. His eyes scanned the space but did not linger. His body did not shift unnecessarily. Yet in that stillness, a subtle pressure spread, a silent command that pulled attention toward him. Across the room, the challenger moved. Not quickly, not with aggression. A slow tightening of the wraps on his wrists, a subtle roll of the shoulders. A deep, measured inhale. His gaze met Bruce's for a brief instant and flickered away. Uncertainty, anticipation, respect. The witnesses held their positions. A camera shutter could not have captured the tension better than the small movements already at play. A slight step forward, the brush of fabric, the swing of a shadow across the floor. Each motion a punctuation in a sentence only the room could read. Bruce paused mid-step. One hand relaxed at his side, one brow lifted. He did not speak. He did not challenge. He did not flinch. Silence became active, drawing the challenger inward, shifting the room's energy without a single word. A faint draft stirred a pile of papers in the corner. The sound was magnified, startling. The challenger's eyes tracked the movement, then returned to Bruce. A subtle nod, almost imperceptible, acknowledged the moment. Time slowed. Every breath, every heartbeat, every flicker of light held meaning. The warehouse was no longer empty. It was a stage. Every presence was a participant. Every glance a negotiation. Every pause a choice. Bruce Lee took one final step into the center. The overhead bulb swayed again, casting dancing shadows across his face. Not a muscle twitched unnecessarily. Not a word escaped, and in that still, silent, loaded moment, the fight had already begun. The fighters stood apart. 30 feet of cold concrete stretched between them. The light above swayed, throwing their elongated shadows across the floor. Every inch of that distance carried meaning. Bruce Lee did not speak. He did not shift his weight unnecessarily. One hand hung loosely at his side. The other twitched slightly, barely perceptible, but it was enough. The room leaned in, waiting. The challenger mirrored him, coiled like a spring. He shifted his weight, just a fraction, testing the distance. His eyes darted to Bruce's stance, then returned to his own hands. Fingers flexed, wrists rotated, breaths measured. The tiniest movements, the smallest adjustments, became statements. A loose plank groaned underfoot. Both men's heads turned slightly toward the sound, acknowledging it, yet neither faltered. The silence was thick, almost tactile, pressing against the skin. Every witness felt it. Muscles tensed, breaths caught. Even the dust in the air seemed to pause mid-motion. Bruce tilted his chin, scanning, one step forward. The shadows shifted, nothing more. Another step, precise, deliberate. The challenger's eyes narrowed. He responded, not by moving, but by straightening his posture, shoulders square, gaze steady. The space between them contracted and expanded with intention. A faint scrape of shoes against concrete echoed. A tiny bead of sweat slid down the challenger's temple. Bruce's lips pressed together. Still no words, still no overt movement. Just presence, just observation. The distance itself became a conversation. The overhead bulb swayed again. Light flickered across Bruce's face. A shadow passed over the challenger's eyes. A micro shift in stance, a barely audible exhale, small moments, yet they carried weight as if the room itself were holding a collective breath. Bruce took another measured step forward. The challenger mirrored him in reverse, inching back, testing timing, testing composure. Each observer instinctively leaned forward, sensing the pull of the unspoken, every heartbeat amplified in the quiet. Then Bruce stopped, mid-step, eyes locked on the challenger. Silence. The room reacted. Shadows seemed heavier. The challenger blinked once, then twice, the faintest hesitation betraying him. Witnesses shifted subtly, unease passing like a ripple through the circle. A single drop of water fell from a pipe above, hitting the concrete between them. The sound was shocking in its precision. Both men's heads flicked toward it. Neither reacted beyond the smallest tilt. Yet everything had shifted. The weight of intention, of control, of focus, settled like a stone in the center of the warehouse. The distance remained, but the balance had subtly changed. Every second that passed, every micro moment made the room, the space, and the two men themselves a living entity. And in that living tension, the fight was silently being written, stroke by stroke, step by step. The challenger did not speak. He stood still for a moment longer, eyes closed, feeling the weight of the warehouse pressing against him. A single exhale escaped. It was slow, controlled, every muscle in his body tense, yet nothing wasted. He knelt briefly, adjusting the wraps on his wrists. Fingers traced the edges of leather with precision. One tap on the concrete floor, another. Each sound resonated sharply in the silence. Micro moments of ritual, unnoticed by anyone but him, revealing a lifetime of preparation. He rose, rolling his shoulders deliberately. Each motion tight and deliberate, a silent story of repetition, discipline, and battles fought long before this night. His gaze moved toward Bruce, then flicked downward, measuring distance, timing, possibilities. The room seemed to contract around the two of them. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. He wiped it with the back of his hand, slow, methodical. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, testing balance. A faint crack from the floor beneath him echoed like a gunshot. He did not flinch. The sound was absorbed, catalogued, weighed. Bruce did not move. He watched, a tilt of the head, a subtle narrowing of the eyes. Not a judgment, not a provocation, observation. The challenger's every motion became magnified, deliberate, purposeful. And yet there was a story behind it, a story of a man shaped by rules, broken by tradition, molded by the violence and discipline of years in shadowed arenas. The warehouse air carried faint scents of metal, rust, and dust. He inhaled deeply. His chest expanded, shoulders tightened. He glanced at the empty corners where shadows pooled. Silent figures shifted slightly. He acknowledged them with a barely perceptible nod. Respect, yes, but caution too. Every witness could feel it. This was a man not merely preparing for a fight, but rehearsing an entire life in micro moments. His eyes returned to Bruce. One slight twitch of a finger, a micro step backward. Bruce mirrored it unconsciously. A subtle acknowledgement of intent and space. The challenger's lips pressed together. No words, just presence. Then he exhaled sharply through his nose. The sound barely audible but enough to slice the silence. One brief pause. One deliberate glance to the far wall. He shifted his stance. Feet lining the lines of the concrete floor. The room held its breath. Bruce remained still. The silence expanded. Shadows danced across the challenger's face as he adjusted, rebalanced, centered himself. The air vibrated, tension layered upon tension, anticipation coiling like a spring. And in that stillness, in those small, deliberate actions, the challenger revealed more about himself than any words ever could. A lifetime of discipline, a shadowed past, and a readiness for the moment where calm would meet chaos. The warehouse waited with him, waiting for Bruce to speak, waiting for the first movement, waiting for the space between them to ignite. Bruce Lee shifted his weight ever so slightly. A subtle exhale escaped him, Audible only in the cavernous silence of the warehouse, the challenger mirrored the motion, coiling, waiting. Then the first movement came. Not a shout, not a rush, just a twitch of a shoulder. The challenger's lead hand shot forward, a punch aimed with precision. Bruce did not retreat. He did not flinch. Instead, he leaned into the line of attack, a calculated slide to the side. The air between the fist and his face hummed with energy. A micro moment passed. Witnesses held their breath. Eyes tracked the almost imperceptible shift of weight. Bruce's foot pivoted. His arm rose in perfect timing. The strike grazed past, a whisper of force, and yet the space it left behind carried the full weight of intention. The challenger spun, launching a low kick toward Bruce's knees. Bruce intercepted with a controlled sweep, inches from impact. Sparks of dust kicked up from the concrete. The movement was precise, surgical. Silence punctuated the rhythm. The room reacted in subtle shifts, the swing of the bulb, the shuffle of feet, a gasp caught in the throat of a witness. Bruce's fingers flicked toward the challenger's face, a flash of motion so fast it barely registered. The challenger recoiled, eyes widening in recognition of speed he had not anticipated. Another step, another pause, timing, restraint, anticipation. Every microbeat carried meaning. The challenger's eyes narrowed, a glimmer of respect, of recalculation. He did not strike immediately. Instead, he shifted stance, a foot scraping lightly on the concrete, testing balance, recalibrating intent. Bruce mirrored the smallest gestures without thought. They circled, step, pause, eye contact. Tiny shifts in posture, micro feints that could have gone unnoticed by any observer but held life or death weight. A bead of sweat slid down the challenger's temple. He wiped it away, slower this time, almost contemplative. Bruce's gaze followed the movement, unflinching. A loose plank underfoot creaked. Both men flinched in perfect unison, micro moments, stretching time. Another pause, another step. Bruce's chest rose gently. The challenger's shoulders tensed, then relaxed slightly. Then a brief flash, a strike aimed at Bruce's midsection. He absorbed the force, redirected it with minimal movement, almost effortlessly. Dust and sweat marked the space between them. Silence fell again, deeper this time. The room itself seemed to lean in, waiting, each heartbeat measured, each breath synchronized. The fight had begun, not with a roar, not with chaos, but with micro moments of tension, restraint, and precision. Every observer knew it. The moment had shifted. Control, balance, and danger now hung in perfect equipoise. Bruce Lee stopped mid-step, not from fear, not from hesitation, just a pause. The smallest fraction of a second, yet the weight of it stretched across the warehouse like a tangible force. The challenger froze as well, his body coiled, ready to move. Yet he did not, eyes locked on Bruce's, calculating, reading, measuring. A silent conversation unfolded between them. No words, no sound, just intention. A drop of water fell from a pipe above, hitting the concrete between them. The sharp crack echoed, magnified in the stillness. Both men's heads flicked toward it. The movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it shifted the air, the energy, the rhythm. Bruce exhaled slowly, almost inaudibly. Shoulders relaxed fractionally. One brow arched just enough to register awareness. Silence became a weapon. The challenger's gaze tightened, tension coiling like a spring. He tested a step forward, then paused, retracing it instinctively. The room held its breath. The witnesses could feel it. Muscle memory, fear, anticipation, all compressed into a single moment. A slight shift of weight by Bruce. A subtle tightening of a fist by the challenger. Another microsecond, and the tension almost screamed. A loose sheet of metal rattled in the corner. Both fighters' eyes darted toward it. Nothing else moved. The sound, the pause, the motionless forms created a rhythm, a heartbeat of the fight, invisible yet omnipresent. Bruce leaned slightly to one side. The challenger mirrored the motion almost unconsciously, as if responding to a signal no one else could hear. Another pause. Bruce's foot tapped lightly, almost an invitation. The challenger mirrored it, one breath delayed, timing, anticipation, restraint. A shadow shifted across the wall. The swing of the overhead bulb painted Bruce in a harsh, fleeting light. The challenger's eyes followed it, micro-adjusting his stance. Another small exhale. Another silent acknowledgement. Both men remained in balance, neither yielding, neither overextending. Bruce's hand twitched slightly, brushing against his side. The challenger's eyelid flickered. A subtle acknowledgement of danger, of awareness, of respect. In these micro moments, the fight was being written in silence, in restraint, in calculation. The pause stretched, became almost unbearable. Every observer felt it, the air thick, heavy, charged with anticipation. Every tiny shift, every flicker of motion, every micro-gesture was amplified. The space between them was alive. The tension, unbroken. Then Bruce shifted his gaze fully, straight into the challenger's eyes. Silence remained, but something changed. The energy of the room, the weight of expectation, subtly shifted. The challenger hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his features. For the first time, the power of restraint outweighed the power of aggression. The room waited, breath caught, and in that pause nothing had moved. Yet everything had changed. Bruce exhaled slowly, letting the silence carry forward. His eyes remained fixed on the challenger. Not a flicker of fear, not a hint of hesitation, just presence. The warehouse seemed to bend around him. The challenger struck first, a sudden lunge. Bruce did not flinch. He stepped lightly, a whisper of movement, and the punch passed by, slicing the air near his face. He did not raise his guard excessively. He did not waste motion, just the smallest adjustment, a tilt, a slip, a redirection, a micro moment. Witnesses leaned forward. Dust rose from the concrete under Bruce's pivot. The challenger's eyes widened fractionally, registering speed and intent he had not anticipated. Bruce's hand flicked outward, not to strike, but to intercept the path, a perfect redirection. Another attack came, a high palm thrust aimed at his chest. Bruce absorbed the force, knees bending imperceptibly, hips shifting, redirecting energy without breaking rhythm. The sound of impact was muted, yet the room felt it reverberate. Micro shifts in weight, micro beats of restraint, every second expanded. Bruce's eyes scanned the space, noting the tiniest imbalance, a subtle shift of the challenger's shoulder. The faintest hint of a stagger became the opportunity. Not with anger, not with force, with precision. A finger jab, a palm strike, an elbow, a controlled side kick. Each hit delivered in silence, each movement a calculated statement. The challenger stumbled slightly, barely perceptible. He caught himself. Eyes locked on Bruce. Recognition, respect, confusion. He adjusted, recalibrated. But Bruce was already moving again, flowing, fluid. Each strike contained minimal energy, maximal control. Each pause carried meaning. Each movement was deliberate, yet natural. The room shifted in response. Shadows deepened. The overhead lights swayed. Dust floated in midair. Witnesses' breaths caught in their throats. Even the challenger's stance changed. His fists relaxed fractionally. Muscles tested themselves against Bruce's motion. He had expected brute force, aggression, but not this combination of calm, speed, and understanding. A single pause. Bruce said nothing. He only observed. The room seemed to inhale collectively, micro moments stacked upon micro moments. Tilts of the head, tapping of a foot, flick of an eye. Every observer understood the fight had transformed. It was no longer a clash of fists. It was a study of control, timing, and awareness. The challenger launched again. A final push meant to end the encounter. Bruce moved inside the strike, unbroken, precise, every blow absorbed or redirected, every movement purposeful, every microsecond stretched, yet contained. Then Bruce stopped, mid-motion, eyes locked, unblinking. Silence fell, heavier than before. The challenger hesitated, the first true crack in his composure. The shift was complete. The room, the tension, the fight itself had quietly changed direction, without a word, without a shout, without a single act of unnecessary violence. The challenger sank to one knee, not fully defeated but broken in a different way. Bruce stood still, chest heaving slightly, sweat glistening along his jawline. His hands hung loosely at his sides, relaxed yet alert. Silence filled the warehouse, heavy and tangible. The witnesses did not move. Each of them had seen violence before, but never like this. The energy had shifted. The fight had ended without a shout, without a final blow, yet the transformation was complete. The challenger's eyes met Bruce's. No anger, no resentment, only a quiet acknowledgement of something beyond technique. Bruce extended a hand. Just a simple gesture, yet it carried weight, a lifetime of understanding, restraint, and respect wrapped into a single motion. The challenger stared at it. The room seemed to hold its breath as the hand hovered for a fraction of a second, suspended in tension. Then slowly, deliberately, the challenger accepted it. Micro moments unfolded. The handshake firm but controlled. A subtle shift of weight as the challenger rose, wincing slightly but standing nonetheless. Bruce's eyes softened, not in triumph, not in pity, but in recognition of the struggle endured. They held the gaze of each other. No words necessary, no explanation required. A bead of sweat rolled down the challenger's temple. He wiped it away with the back of his hand. Slower this time, reflective. Another microsecond, a nod of understanding, almost imperceptible. The room seemed to exhale collectively. Shadows danced on the walls, the swinging bulb casting long, trembling lines across the concrete floor. Bruce lowered himself slightly, meeting the challenger eye to eye. Neither rushed, neither moved hastily. The warehouse itself had shifted. Time had contracted and expanded simultaneously. The fight had ended, but the tension lingered in subtle shifts, breathing, stance, the smallest tilt of the head. The challenger exhaled, long and deliberate. A subtle relaxation ran through his shoulders, down to his fingertips. Bruce mirrored the release, chest expanding, shoulders dropping. In that simple, silent synchronization, the power of restraint revealed itself. The fight had not been about domination. It had been about revelation. James Lee, standing nearby, wiped his brow. He dared not speak. He had witnessed hundreds of fights, yet none carried the gravity of this encounter. Every micro-moment, every shift, pause, glance, had been magnified into a lesson without words. A final beat. The challenger lowered his gaze briefly, then looked back, holding Bruce's eyes with a quiet, unspoken respect. Bruce nodded once. Not in triumph, not in victory, but in acknowledgement. They had crossed a line few ever reached, and the transformation was complete, not of one, but of both. The warehouse remained still. Even the air seemed to have changed. Every shadow, every echo, every subtle sound now carried a new weight. The room, the men, and the moment itself were altered irrevocably. The warehouse doors closed behind them, the echo of footsteps fading into the quiet streets of Hong Kong. Bruce walked without haste, his body still marked by the night, bruises forming, sweat drying into streaks on his skin. His expression was calm, disciplined, untouched by pride. The fight had ended, but its resonance lingered. The witnesses followed, their own movements slower, measured. Every step carried the weight of what they had seen. Micro moments persisted, an almost imperceptible glance exchanged between two of them, a slow inhale, a subtle shift of posture. The night itself seemed to hold its breath, preserving the secret. Bruce spoke only once, quietly. The challenge was not theirs to deliver, but ours to meet. No one replied. They did not need to. The city outside moved on, oblivious to the transformation that had unfolded within the concrete walls they had just left. 3 weeks later, the challenger arrived at Bruce's training hall. His knee still bore the faintest trace of the struggle, a physical reminder of the encounter. Yet he walked with purpose. Bruce greeted him without ceremony. No accolades, no congratulations, just presence. A quiet acknowledgement that their meeting had changed both of them and would continue to shape them. Micro moments defined the training that followed. A shift of stance, a small adjustment of grip, a subtle movement in response to a gesture. Knowledge flowed silently, exchanged in the rhythm of motion rather than the cadence of words. Bruce's restraint remained absolute. The challenger's respect grew organically, without expectation or demand. The partnership evolved. Bruce shared insights on efficiency and flow, biomechanics, and timing. The challenger offered depth in internal energy, structure, and centuries of disciplined tradition. Their interactions were unhurried, deliberate, rich with micro moments, the brushing of hands, the tilt of heads, the silent acknowledgement of a subtle correction. Each moment compounded, a chain reaction of growth and understanding. Outside, the world remained unaware. The streets, the markets, the neon-lit alleys, all carried on as if nothing had changed. Yet inside that quiet circle, something had shifted. Tradition and innovation intertwined, not in conflict, but in dialogue. The lessons of the night, the fight, the restraint, the mercy, echoed in every movement, every choice, every breath. Years later, when Bruce departed this world, the memory of that warehouse fight lived on quietly among the few who had witnessed it. The legacy was not recorded in newspapers, not dramatized in public, but embedded in the discipline, the philosophy, the very motion of those who carried its truth forward. In every micro moment that followed, every deliberate step, every silent pause, every restrained motion, the echo of that night persisted. Bruce Lee's most dangerous fight had concluded decades ago, yet its ripple shaped generations, unseen, unheard, yet profoundly alive. The streetlights flickered, the wind shifted, and somewhere in motion both subtle and eternal, the fight continued, not in violence but in the quiet, disciplined act of living.